Welcome to a meeting of the Hunterdon Central Regional High School Board of Education. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6, and that advance notice required therein has been provided. Meeting notice was also posted in the boardroom of the Upper School campus, sent to the Courier News, Star Ledger, Express Times, and the Hunterdon County Democrat, and sent to the clerks of Delaware Township, East Damwell Township, Flemington Borough, Raritan Township, and Reddington Township. The public will have an opportunity to be heard as shown on the agenda. Can I have a roll call, please?
Here.
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 Here. Please rise for the flag salute.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Can I have a motion, please, for approval of the July 18th minutes?
So moved.
I have a
Second.
motion. Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson, sorry. Let me do that again because you didn't hear me.
We're not going to have a quorum.
I abstain. I wasn't present at that
We're
meeting.
not going to have a quorum on majority on the minutes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Sorry, we're just discussing that. We have 5 board members here tonight. And if Mr. Davidson abstains. Yeah.
That's true.
We have a quorum for the meeting.
I think you may be right, Mrs. Hughes.
Yeah, we can hold
We
the
do the
approval on it.
minutes
We'll
right,
vote on the
that's a-
July 18th minutes.
We'll just put-
next
right.
month, hoping that everybody's going to be here. We have a number of correspondence that are received, noted on the agenda. And with that, we'll move right into the superintendent report.
Thank you, Mrs. Hughes. Thank you, everybody. It sounds rough out there with the thunder, that's for sure. So we're on the edge of a new school year, embarking on a new school year, and thankful for something that we haven't had, even at this late hour, over the past couple of years, which is clarity on public health procedures. And the good news that I've shared, certainly with all of you and with the staff in the community, is that a lot of the procedures that we've become used to are standing down. Contact tracing, required vaccination or testing for staff, quarantine for close contacts. These things are moving into the past for all of us. No more daily emails on the number of cases. Those sorts of things are behind us for now. So we're thankful for some normalcy here, but we also, and I have to continue to say, we all continue to say that there's no normal to go back to. And we regard, lack of socialization and a lot of other factors that have left us with serious concerns and serious work to do as we head into this school year. Now, in the spring, we administered climate and culture surveys. We've shared information about that here, and I shared some information in a long letter to the community late last week. Those surveys, as I presented here, were different from the last round of surveys that we had administered back in 2019, which were even different from surveys before that. So we haven't had the same survey over all of those administrations, and certainly a long gap since our last administration. So in that, we have to recognize those surveys are given to very different cohorts of kids. So the most recent survey was given to a group of kids, the majority of whom were not here when the initial survey, the prior survey, was given back in 2019. We never pretend that survey projects, especially homegrown surveys, survey projects that are analyzed through averages and other methodologies that we can manage here, we never pretend that those are rigorous or irrefutably valid from a purely research perspective. That's not the goal of any survey done in any school. And any school that's standing up and saying that a survey is a statistically valid measurement done in the way that climate and culture surveys are done in schools is misunderstanding the requirements of such a measurement. It's doubly true, though, when you're taking a survey under all the context that I talked about before. different groups of really, really different groups of kids over multiple years, different surveys, different numbers of choices, all of those things. The most that you can hope for out of that kind of analysis is directional. It's directional. And no one has been hiding from concerns that have been raised by the directionals in those surveys when it comes to safety, when it comes to substance use, when it comes to mattering and belonging. No one has been hiding from those things, and my letter on Friday to the community spoke specifically about a lot of those issues. Now, directionals give you avenues for further study. They can also give you, if you're confident in what you're discovering, avenues to attack next levels of work. So I want to talk about that a little bit here. I don't know if the thunder is coming across in our live stream, but it's pretty nasty out there. So the directionals that we've seen have given us concern and pointed out next levels of work. We need to do some additional study to zero in a little bit more as we do the work that we've isolated for beginning next year. We are going to deploy the PRIDE survey this coming fall. That's a national survey that has much more value and much more rigor than our own homegrown efforts over the past few years. I'm interested to note also that just last week, New Jersey announced that they've revamped their own climate and culture survey, the one that sits as the root of our own projects. They've revamped it and put it online. These two projects allow us to really get a sense of how we're comparing to other districts in a larger context. So the PRIDE survey, and we're looking at the reimagined New Jersey Department of Education survey that was just released last week. Now, as far as immediate next levels of work, we've worked really hard to see if we can learn anything from changes in the data over time. And as I've said, it was really difficult because different surveys, different groups of kids, different designs, you end up with directionals at best. But we feel very confident in a few of those. So in my most recent letter to the community, I sounded alarm about safety, belonging, mattering, etc. Again, no one here is turning away from any of those responsibilities or concerns. No one here is saying the positives are good enough, so we're not going to pursue work in those areas. We're going to hide from those. Nobody's saying that. It's not the message that I gave you at the podium in July, and it's certainly not the message that was in my email to the community this past Friday. We have serious, serious work to do. I want to focus on safety for just one moment. Not only have we been working on safety from a large picture perspective for some time, with significant investment across our power infrastructure, our networking, our computer network, and more, we've done some very specific things, many of which we're doing for this coming school year. So we've completed now increased security with additional entrance barriers at all of our major entrances, 9, 10, 11, 12, and it was wrapped up into the IMC project as well. We're going to continue that in future years. We're looking at other entrances across campus that serve almost as main entrances for different functions, and we're going to start beefing them up as security entrances as well, with vestibule, multiple doorways to go through, a security guard challenge, all of that stuff has been built up over the past couple of years. Over the past couple of years, we've updated our emergency notification and camera systems. This past year, we had all new camera systems, and we're continuing to add cameras and capabilities to that system as we move forward. We rekeyed every lock on campus over the past 2 to 3 years so that every lock is now under a new key, so that we've refreshed all of our keys so that there's no concern about any keys being out there in the wrong hands. Over the past couple of years, we hired 2 Class 3 officers to join our full-time student resource officer. We're adding a 3rd Class 3 officer in the very near future. Raritan Township has just approved a candidate who will be joining us soon, and we'll make introduction to that individual once they're onboarded. We've also increased our cooperation with law enforcement, mental health, other agencies, to the level that we now host the Children's Interagency Council meetings here on campus, the kayak meetings as they're called, so that those agencies all know and see our concerns in real time, and that our staff has an ability to interface with all those agencies With that, we've increased our work with the faith community through the One Voice initiative here in Hunterdon. We've been taking our consultation with county law enforcement agencies to the level of being privileged to host their flagship training this past week. So on Friday, we had just over 50 officers working through drills here on campus representing law enforcement agencies from across the county and from the county SWAT team as well. Lastly, I mentioned in my email to the community as well, we've installed detectors in each of our, we're in the process right now of installing detectors in each of our restrooms that will be triggered on student vaping, on THC usage, and even on signs and signals of vandalism in the restroom. So that's all coming online as we come in September as well. So work on our safety here at Central is never done. Now, in addition to sort of more rigorous surveys that I've mentioned and all of those steps in safety and security, I should point out as well that the board has done very important and powerful work for us in policy so that we have directions on reimagining relationships. We've talked a bit about our efforts that are going to be underway to curb student social media use and concerns there. I can speak more about that as well. There's a lot underway. But in addition to all of that, we're going to take the results from the survey that we gave in the spring, and as part of our continued efforts to bring that all to the community, the information I've shared with you tonight, everything that we do moving forward, all those pie graphs that you saw from the survey when we looked at it in July, all that's going to be on our website very soon for the community. So we'll have announcements, and as I promised in my letter, as we make those additions to our website, we'll be announcing them to the community as we go. So in short order, you'll see all of that data on our website, plus all of the additional information that I'm sharing here with you tonight. Again, no one's interested in hiding from anything. We have serious concerns and serious work to do. Now, I have to finish with a few thoughts that some of this work, we feel in our gut. We don't need surveys to tell us some things about how our kids are doing and feeling. Schools have a gut. It's really interesting. Schools have eyes and ears as well, which is fascinating. And I just want to share a few things. The school sees a lot. The school sees Facebook posts in our community that share theories about the Uvalde school shooting being a hoax perpetrated through a Google mind control project. Our school sees that. Okay, the school at a recent meeting saw a member of the audience, someone who was very concerned about school climate and culture, stifling laughter as one of our students stood very bravely at that podium and talked about the need for everyone to love one another. The school saw that. The school heard the words of a group of residents in the lobby at a board meeting in the spring who, on their way out, called the board and myself and the administration, and forgive my indelicacy here, called us all a bunch of Marxist-loving trannies. That was said by a group of people leaving our meeting in the spring in our atrium. And to be precise, a student heard that. A student heard that. That student was deeply offended and shaken, yet had the wherewithal to be worried about me and you and Mr. Brandt, and came to us later to make sure that we were okay and that we wouldn't be discouraged in our work for our students. So our kids don't always have the best examples of behavior. They sometimes make poor choices, that's for sure. But our kids can sure remind us of the love and power in their hearts. And when I see that, well, that gives me all the hope I need to do this tough work, even when some of the behavior on and off social media concerns us or even turns our stomachs. How many HIB cases did we discuss that either started on or evolved through social media? That's quite a high count. Our kids are in a more complex and confusing context than I think I've seen in my entire career, nearly 30 years in this business. We have important work to do. It's time to be for things. It's time to be for things. It's time to be for the need for each of our students to be able to access the promises that we offer, and it's time to be for the efforts that close the gaps that stand in their way, whether they're systemic, implicit, or what have you. It's time to be for things, to contribute to solutions together, not just to be against things. It's time to find common ground in what we're for, and it's time for sincere, informed, and reasonable people to start saying enough. I have too much work to do to continue wasting time arguing about the work. Our kids need us to do something else. Okay. So look forward to announcements soon about more information that's going to move to our website, and we'll continue those conversations as we go forward, and as we continue to bring in more rigorous measurements of culture, we'll share all of that information as well. But we look forward to getting started on safety, security, wellness, engagement, belonging, mattering. We have a lot in store for this year. Now, a couple of additional things, and I have to turn it over to Jessica Cangelosi-Haight and Dr. Laura Ardonda to share some information about graduation pathways data and access testing results data. These are state-mandated reports that I have to bring you to tonight, so I'll ask you to sit down there in a little bit. I just have a couple of quick things to share. Our QSAC rating came through. QSAC is a review that occurs, you remember, QSAC occurs every 3 years, and the state sends a team out to monitor and quantify our accountability across multiple dimensions. It happens every 3 years. We've scored high enough into the highest grades to be considered a high-performing school district based on that comprehensive review. I just have to run down the scores for you. In instruction and program, that's one of the sections, we scored 87%. The vast majority of that section depends on student achievement on state and other exams, including our special education and English language learner students. Under fiscal management, we scored 100%. Under governance, we scored 94%. Under operations, we scored 93%. And under personnel, we scored 100%. So that puts us in the high-performing status. We have to score above 80 on every single one of those, and we bested that by quite a ways. So I have to report that to you tonight as our final score. You've all seen those scores, I think, through some of my updates, but I have to report on it publicly. I also have some organizational items that I want to point out before we dive into Jessica and Laura's presentation and also talk about other things on the agenda. Under organizational items, we have two policies. They're board bylaws, 0147 and 0147A. And I'm recommending for a first read that those be abolished. And the reason is those have slipped by under the radar for quite some time. Years ago, the district adopted, under changes in state law, a policy on expenses and travel, and that was years ago, years before my time, probably 10 or more years ago. That policy was meant to substitute for all the other policies on the books that deal with travel and reimbursement. And that policy specifically cites board members. So 0147 and 0147A are redundant at this point, and we have a few other policies to sort of attack on the agenda tonight as redundant. So I'm recommending that those two policies be abolished from the bylaw manual, just to simplify our manual. And with that, I'll ask.
Can I speak out of turn? Just on two topics that you spoke of, just because we're in the moment. I just want to speak briefly on the climate survey data. Thank you, Dr. Moore, for committing to get all that data, which has been available to the entire board since day one, up on the website. If it gives folks a better feeling to see all the data, to interpret it as they wish, that's fine. It has always been what has guided us to the work we needed to do. So that data will be up there. It's the data we've all seen, the pie charts we've seen, and it will be available on the website. So thank you, Dr. Moore, for committing to get that up shortly. And the other thing I just want to speak to is the law enforcement training we had on Friday. I want to thank Dr. Moore for inviting me. It was intense, to say the least. I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to take part in it, to see the intense training that our law enforcement does. The one thing I can say coming out of it is there is no other group of folks that I would want protecting us and our children. God forbid we have a active shooter situation or any other emergency situation. I'm extremely grateful to the Hunterdon County Prosecutor's Office, the SWAT team, and all of the local and regional law enforcement who were here and participated that day, and are very thankful for the work they do protecting us.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was hard to come out of that event with my thoughts straight, right? We were talking about that it was quite an intense experience to follow them through the building. Mr. Brandt got a chance to walk through on that as well with some of his team, and I want to thank everybody for the cooperation around the schedule change. We did want to close campus to allow them full run on campus that day. But the only thing I could think of sort of walking away from that was just that these folks know what they're doing. And there was no end of comfort from that for me through the weekend as I was counting my blessings heading into this school year. So without further ado, let me ask us to move down to some of the seats in the front. We'll ask Jessica and Laura, Ms. Cangelisi-Hade, and Dr. Arredondo to come up and talk to all of us about graduation pathways and access scores.
Okay. Oh, okay, that's on. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having Dr. Arredondo and I. We're here to present results on our 2022 Access Assessment, as well as our Graduation Pathways Report. So we do these annually. All test results have to be done within 60 days of receiving the individual student reports, and we do our graduation report each year prior to the school year starting or shortly thereafter. So I will begin with some basic information about Access. This is probably a lesser known assessment. It doesn't receive as much attention as something like NJSLA or the more recent NJGPA. So Access stands for Assessing Comprehension and Communication in English, State to State, and it's an assessment for English language learners. It's an assessment used by WIDA, and WIDA is an organization that provides resources, more than just assessments, for educators who support our multilingual learners. The purpose of the Access Assessment is to measure English language proficiency, and this is done K-12. It measures it in multiple components, 4 domains: speaking, listening, reading, and writing, and then it also provides an overall composite score. Also important to know about Access is that it satisfies the federal requirement for the Every Student Succeeds Act and monitoring student progress towards English proficiency. Measuring the proficiency is a little bit different than you may be used to with the more widely known NJSLA. As you know, with NJSLA, students are measured from a 1 to 5, with 4 and 5 being considered passing from the state. 4 would be proficient, a 5 advanced proficient. This assessment is different. There's no such thing as passing. What we're doing is looking at proficiency levels to see what the growth is among our English language learners. So here you can see kind of where it goes. Level 1 is entering, level 6 is reaching. What's important to know is that in order to exit an English language learner program, you need a score of a 4.5. And so historically, the target for student proficiency growth is 0.5 per year, which is an average of two levels over 4 years. Right now, that's suspended, and it's been suspended for a few years. We don't know when it will come back, but that's still just an internal target that we use to look at growth and proficiency. So just some more information. I will not read this whole thing, but I thought it would be important for the board to see what exactly those levels mean in terms of language proficiency. So again, we're looking at a 4.5 as I put in the middle there. So level 4 is expanding, where there's some technical language, there's minimal language errors you can still comprehend. And then level 5 would be bridging, so it's more specialized language and more complex expression. We also thought it would be important for you, I just went over those 4 domains, but I thought it would be important for you all to see kind of what a score report looks like. So there are the 4 domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and you can see that the proficiency levels vary. Of course, this is just a sample student, so students may be more similar among their domains. And then it gives the scale score as well. So now we wanted to talk about our results for 2022. So we had 86 Ls. And typically when I provide test assessment results, I should say, we do subgroup disaggregation, but our Ls actually are a subgroup. So disaggregating this is a little different and a little more difficult. So you see our breakdown, 83% or 83 of the 86 are Hispanic. In terms of race, we have 1 Asian and 85 white. And then I thought you would find the languages interesting. It's not just Spanish, there are 3 other languages. And then a breakdown of males to females. So we have 53 males and 33 females that took the assessment. Also interesting, because a lot of times we'll do longitudinal data. So we wanted to note that what makes access and testing our multilingual learners a little bit different is their year of entry. So as you can see, among our students, this is when they entered the system. So before July 2018, only 3, versus 21, 22, we had 37. So it is difficult to get more longitudinal data, and this changes from year to year. And I wanted to show that on this next slide about our continued enrollment. Many times, especially during the pandemic, this can be a more transient population that we're looking at for various reasons. So we have seen an influx of English language learners this school year. You can see that last year we were at 58 that we tested, and this year we're at 85. We had 1 student who did not test, if you were noting that we were talking about 86 in terms of the full English language learner demographic. But what's really interesting to note is that 48 of those 85 were enrolled last year. So that's very good retention if you're looking at our number enrolled from the prior year, where we only had 26% that we were looking at in terms of longitudinal or growth data. And I'm now going to ask Dr. Arredondo to talk a little bit more about the results.
Thank you. My name is Laura Arredondo. I'm the supervisor of World Languages and ELL programs. I would just like to go back to something that Jessica mentioned about the changing population every year. It's very difficult to compare one year to another because the sample sizes are not large, and also because they fluctuate so much. But one of the problems that we have is that students do not remain in the program very long. So achieving that 46%, of course, we want to exceed that, but that is much better than we've had in the past years. And unfortunately, the instability the past couple of years, the pandemic situation has just made that more difficult for students. As you can see, like I said, it's difficult to compare years, but statistically, there's very little difference from one year to another. You might wonder why it looks like each of these domains is slightly less for the year 2022, but why the composite score is higher. And that's because there is a specific algorithm for the composite score. They weight the reading and writing more than the speaking and listening. So you can see here our average growth this year. Now we want to have every student achieve a growth of 0.5 or more. I am in no way excusing us. We don't want 3.36 to be our average growth, and that is smaller than last year. However, 36% of our students achieve this result compared to only 20% last year. And if you look at those sample sizes, you can see how difficult it is to compare one year to another. From 32 students in 2019 to 15 to 48. This is not the total population. This is the number of students in the current population who were in attendance the year before. So consistency in at retaining students is number one. So strengths this year. I also have to say that this report is relatively new to us. So this is our second year doing this report. So it's a really great opportunity because with you, we created some goals for this year. So I'll be able to refer back to those goals that we announced during last year's presentation of the access scores. But some of our strengths is, as I mentioned, we do have an increased number of returning students. Our retention rate is better. We have an increased percentage of students meeting the historical goal for growth and proficiency. Even though we're not happy with that, we're going to increase it. And one of our goals from last year, which I'll talk a little bit more, and this is not in the access report, as in many measures, the state requires that we do this access of English language proficiency, but they also require that we have a native language literacy program, but we do not have any required measurement for growth in literacy. So we worked very hard to find a diagnostic that we could use for this. This is our second try at finding a good product, and I think we've found one. And as you'll see, the literacy data really does demonstrate solid growth in reading proficiency. And if you think about in classrooms how much is reinforced by text, I really expect that this will be reflected in English language proficiency growth in future years. So as I mentioned last year, these were our three goals to start this new reading program. Which takes place in our bilingual literacy program, our bilingual program, and we hired a reading coach that gave extensive training to our bilingual teachers as well as our ESL teachers. We did a curriculum and review and revision, and in our ESL 3 and 4 class, and this is our trial year of doing it, we're integrating some of the state's requirements for the ELA graduation, the portfolio assessments, which is fairly rigorous writing tasks that students need to do. So that's going to be integrated in the ESL 3 and 4 program, something that districts with a larger population regularly do, and as we have more and more students every year, it's certainly appropriate that we look at this. Also, the new standards really focus on that all classes, that it benefits all students to have both language and content objectives. And what that means is a language objective is not just learning the vocabulary words in a biology class, although that is a language objective. It's also using the words in a particular subject area in a meaningful way to express the meaning, to explain how something happens, to compare and contrast. So you can see how this is something that benefits all students. One of the trainings I've been pointing out the past couple of years, the actual format of the test, and many colleagues were surprised at how much content material is on this test. This isn't just English language proficiency, what did you do last summer vacation, but can you explain the life cycle of salmon? You know, this is very attached to content areas, so that's very important information to get out there. So our interventions and areas of focus, for this year, we're going to continue with our reading program in bilingual language arts. And as I mentioned, that's more of a long-term goal. I mean, not really long-term, but we would expect for that to be reflected in English proficiency increases within 2 to 5 years. We are going to reintegrate our YPAR project, which was part of our bilingual program. YPAR stands for Youth Participatory Action Research. And like many things in education, it's kind of a new label for an old idea. And this is basically bringing high-quality, research-based instruction into the ELL classroom. And that increases engagement for all students. And I think we all know that the best way to get kids to do higher-level critical thinking work is to give them higher-level critical thinking work. And then we're currently training our content area ELL teachers in the new WIDA standards. The new standards came out 2020, but given the flux of the past couple of years, all the changes, these are not going to go into effect. We expect that New Jersey will adapt these standards in fall 2023, but we're getting ready for that. They really are similar to the old standards. There's just a re-emphasis on the integration of language and content. And student wellness, we find, I mean, this is really counseling. I don't know if you're going to mention it later, but one of the issues that we have is that the students come in and they leave very quickly. We really need to work on supporting students in envisioning an academic trajectory, imagining an academic future, seeing where they could go, thinking about graduating from high school, going on to technical school or college, thinking about their long-range educational plans. And unfortunately, for many of these students, their plans tend to be kind of short-term plans because there's a lot of competing challenges in their lives. So going back to the Spanish literacy program, this is called the ANEAL program. This is a great program. We worked very hard to find this program. It's one of the few, it's the only one I know of actually, Spanish literacy programs that's not just a mere translation of an English program. Obviously, reading programs are based partly on phonics and sound letter connections and which phonemes are the most frequent. So the problem with many Spanish reading programs is they just take an English program that's translated. So they'll address first the phonemes that are most frequent in English. And obviously, it's to the advantage of these students, many who come in well below grade level in reading, to have a program that's geared for their knowledge. So we are now measuring the intake of ELL students in their literacy level. Those who need the support will go into the bilingual language arts program. We do have some students who are entering at grade level in reading in Spanish, and those students will not be in the program. And so here are the levels of the Spanish literacy program. These are all colors in Spanish, amarillo y verde, etc. So anything above orange, which is grade level 5, anaranjado, those students are deemed to be at grade level, and they are not in the bilingual program. So here is our students, 33 students that we measured. We only included those who started in September with us, so there were some who came in the middle of the year, many who came in the middle of the year that we have test results for, but we don't have the comparison scores, and we won't until next year. But every single student showed growth. Some of them showed amazing growth. And the students, the beauty about reading and learning to read is that it's a discovery activity. And the reward is in the students understanding what they read. You know, they sound out a word, they discover the meaning, and then they can transfer this knowledge into their ESL and English content area classes. And, it's amazing. You really do see this more anecdotal information. You can imagine little light bulbs going off over kids' heads. Very exciting. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Arredondo. So we're going to transition now to our pathways to graduation. And so I wanted to remind everyone, although this will soon be outdated, the graduation requirements from the State Department of Education. So there are multiple pathways. The first pathway is passing the NJSLA for English language arts as well as for math. Students who are unable to pass those or who don't take those also can have a second pathway. So you can see them all listed there. There's other NJSLA assessments they can take, formerly PARC. So there are still some, although there are still some students out there who have taken PARC, as you know. It used to be called PARC, now it's called the NJSLA, the New Jersey Student Learning Assessment. But they can also satisfy that second pathway with ACT or SAT scores, as well as the ASVAB or the AccuPlacer. And we do offer the ASVAB and AccuPlacer in school for students who need to use that alternate pathway. And for students who are unable to meet the requirement using any one of those pathways, there is a third pathway, which is the portfolio process. And Dr. Arredondo actually just referenced this, and that we're putting some of the ELA portfolio, we're aligning the curriculum in ESL 3 and 4 to some of the tasks for the portfolio tasks for ELA. But these are more open-ended prompts that students have to complete to show that they've mastered and are proficient in standards that they can graduate. So I wanted to put that up there. Now, with the caveat to say that this was in place for the class of 2022, but if you recall, it was suspended for 2020 as well as 2021, and will actually be suspended for the class of 2023. So the last time I talked about this, I think it was 2019, and next year we won't have this up because there will not be a need to satisfy those pathways. So I do want to put that out there, that the Department of Education did recently, about a month ago, release the information that they were suspending the assessment requirement for the class of 2023. So this is a simple report. It's just to report out on the numbers, and I thought I would also provide just some commentary on that. So we had 621 graduates, and those are the numbers that make up the 621. So 382 passed the NJSLA and ELA and math. 113 completed some of those alternative assessments that I just reviewed, whether they were other NJSLA assessments or SAT, ACT, Accuplacer, or ASVAB. We had 5 students complete portfolio appeals in math and ELA. And then we had 90 students with multiple pathways in ELA and math. And what that means is they may have passed NJSLA in one, but not in the other. So perhaps they passed NJSLA in their ELA grade 9, but not for their math, let's say Algebra 1. So they may have had to then do an alternate competency assessment. So any combination of the two up above puts them in multiple pathways. And we do have 31 students as a result of their IEP. It's noted that they do not need to take or pass the NJSLA assessments. They have an alternate requirement. And so you will see we have 34 students who did not graduate. 20 of those students did not graduate due to not receiving credits, enough credits, I should say. 14 of those students are actually dropout students. So our graduation rate for our 2022 preliminarily is 94.81. That's actually higher than last year by just a hair, by a couple tenths. Last year was, I believe, 94.4. The year prior, 94.3. So I do say preliminarily because we are waiting. There is a possibility up to August 31st that students may satisfy a graduation requirement. We do not know of any, but it is possible it could pop up. So that's why I use that term. Yes, and I will tell you, most of them plan on coming back, whether it's through their IEP that they're coming for, that 5th year, so they will be coming back to us. So they would be included in the 5-year count, the 5-year percentage. Just to make some commentary in terms of where does this put us comparatively? Again, it's difficult. We can't compare to past years because the assessment requirement has been suspended. But if we go back to 2019 and try and compare, which is a very difficult thing because 2019 was pre-pandemic. And I note that because the biggest difference in data is right there on that first line where it says pass the NJSLA, ELA, and math. In 2019, that student count was much higher. It was about 75% of our students satisfied that way. That's not to say that students failed the first time through. What that says is This class of 2022, the last time they took an assessment was in 2019. So some of them may not have even tested in 2019. And so that's why we see actually the alternate competency assessments so much higher than usual, is because they may not have tested. In math, we only test in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. So many of those students were not yet even in Algebra 1 in their 9th grade year to test and sit for the NJSLA. So I just wanted to note the importance of that. Our overall graduation rate is still good, but there is a difference in terms of the pathway breakdown. Something that is coming down the pike that I thought it would be interesting for everyone to know, this is our state graduation rate, but we are hearing that there will be a federal calculation, and we're not sure yet what that means, although we're hearing it might mean that they're not honoring our need to personalize the assessment requirement for students, especially those with IEPs. So it's possible that our federal rate may look a little different or may look a little lower because they may not account for all the different pathways up there. So we'll be looking out for that more. Traditionally, the school performance reports are not released until, I want to say, January each year. So we'll know more before then, but I did want to point that out to the board. And that's it for the graduation pathways. I don't know, would you like me to take questions or no, we're done? Okay. Thank you.
So I do want to thank Mrs. Cangelosi-Haight and Dr. Arredondo for not just that report, but I have to share my admiration for the expertise with which they both delivered their information tonight. You know, folks at Central have tough work to do, as I kind of said earlier. And one thing I'll share too is our excitement as we come into this school year. Many of my colleagues across the state are in a very difficult position of having many unfilled teaching spots. Whole states are struggling with that. We hear about that from Florida, we hear about it from Michigan, but my colleagues across the state, I have colleagues with similar sized districts who are facing 15, 20 open seats in their staff and faculty. And we're not in that position. We're in a much better position to open the year with a full complement of staff. And it's those people doing the work under folks like Jessica and Laura who are directing not just this difficult work to meet our state requirements, but also doing it thoughtfully and deliberately. It's tough stuff that they do, and it takes a lot of expertise. One thing that Jessica mentioned about the federal graduation rate, one of the things that she was starting to talk about there was a situation in which, and you heard her right, students who are actually considered having graduated by the state of New Jersey will not necessarily count as being graduated by the federal government. And in particular, there is a group of students in special education for whom the state doesn't have a suitable assessment. You know, we have our dynamic learning maps assessment, we have our NJSLAs, we have our portfolio tasks. I'm not going to shoehorn an assessment into a kid's life just to meet some compliance requirement. I want to make sure that we have the proper assessment for every one of our students, and we do have the ability through IEPs to forgive students from the assessment process entirely. So sometimes we do that in situations where there isn't an appropriate assessment from the state of New Jersey for our kids. Those are among the groups of students, for example, who wouldn't necessarily be counted as having graduated by the federal government, but whom New Jersey counts as graduated. So we're interested to see how this all pans out and what it looks like for all the districts across the state. But thank you again, both of you, and excellent work. And we don't celebrate enough. Dr. Arredondo, as supervisor of our World Languages Department, is also working with teachers who have created what the state has designated as a model world languages department there. So that's excellent stuff that they're doing. And with that, and with thanks for all of your attention, I turn it over to you, Mrs. Hughes.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. We will then move into our first residence forum for any action items on the agenda. Okay, if there's no one speaking on that, can I have a motion, please, on our organizational item to abolish the bylaws that Dr. Moore spoke of in his superintendent report, please?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Blackfield,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson, Mr. Fowler,
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg,
Yes.
Mrs. Hughes.
Yes, thank you. With that, we'll move into our committee reports, student life and programs. Ms. Kellogg, you're going to do that, correct? Thanks.
We have a lot on our agenda. So item 1.1 is to adopt the curricula. The district approves the curriculum annually, and there are several new classes this year, which include entrepreneurship, stock market investing, cybersecurity, honors linear algebra, biomedical services or sciences, and Chinese conversation. Item 1.2, we need to adopt textbooks. This is another annual thing that we do. However, there are no new textbooks this year to be adopted. Item 1.3, tuition and transportation. Dr. Webb reviewed the tuition and transportation agreements. These are all for existing students. Item 1.4, North Hunterdon Voorhees High School ELL program. So these are students that are coming to us for our ELL program. We'll be receiving 2 students this year. Item 1.5, the foreign exchange students. Ms. Cangelozzi Hayde provided us information on each of the students, and we're excited to have them join us this year. Item 1.6, or candidates for early graduation. Item 1.7 was policies for first read. Ms. Cangelozzi Hayde and Mr. Brandt reviewed the policies. Policy 2415, Every Student Succeeds Act, has been revised to align with the updated language from the legislation. Policy 2415.04, the Title I district-wide parent and family engagement, has been revised to include parent and family engagement. It formerly addressed parent involvement but did not specifically address engagement. Policy 5517, the school district issued the student identification cards, are required to have specific information on them, which was not, we were not aware of that information at the time that the cards were ordered. So there will be stickers added to those cards. Under policies for second reading, we reviewed 5320, the immunization, as well as 0413.2, the high school representation on the board. I believe we're going to talk more about that at our retreat this week. Item 1.9 is abolishing policies on first read. Those are all redundant policies, like Dr. Moore was talking about with the policies we've already voted on. Item 1.10 is the TCNJ agreement. 1.11 is the financial impact of the professional development that we've already approved, because we didn't have that information at the time that we've approved it. Item 1.12 is the Hunterdon Healthcare for 2022-2023 school-based youth services. Item 1.13 is the McKinney-Vento Education for Homeless Children grant, intent to collaborate, and I think that's everything. So we're moving items 1.1 to 1.13.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? One thing that I want to say is that I'm excited to brainstorm ideas for our student rep on the Board of Ed. Hopefully after our retreat next week, we'll have some good ideas as to how to implement that and have that in place hopefully within the next couple of months. So that'll be an exciting topic of discussion for us next week. Any other comments? Hearing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Mrs. Blackfield,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson, Mr. Fowler,
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hughes.
Yes. Thank
All
you.
yeses.
ONT. Mr. Fowler.
Yes, thank you. 19 items to run through today under heading H, O&T. First is move to approve our financial report ending through June 30th of 2022. Next item is invoices and bills totaling just over $3 million as recorded on the agenda. We have a few account line transfers that we're approving. We are also abolishing a number of policies, first reading. Same as the others, a lot of expenses and duplicative policies as I understand them. Next item is a financial year 2022 homeless tuition reimbursement from the state of New Jersey. Next item is lead testing reimbursement through the Nation Act grant, the amount of $5,000-3113. We are accepting funding from the state of New Jersey for additional or compensatory special education-related services. Next item is accepting funding from New Jersey School Development Authority for emergent and capital maintenance needs. A lot of this had to deal with addressing COVID-19 activities and improvements throughout the campus. We are awarding a contract renewal with Care Plus New Jersey, Inc. for $230,000 for clinician or therapist services. We are purchasing a number of different vans and buses. So the first movement on that is purchase of 3 29-passenger school vans. We're also approving a second purchase of 2 54-passenger buses, and then a separate purchase of 1 54-passenger bus. Please keep in mind as we're approving all these that the price of all of them is essentially going to be split between us and Flemington through the JTC. We are accepting or approving joint transportation routes between us and Delaware Township's Board of Education. We are approving a scheduled service agreement with Train USA with our cooling systems on campus. It's my understanding that that's kind of the brand that we use, and so it's best to work with them. Professional service provider approved for psychiatric evaluations and nursing at, oops, I just moved it, sorry, $740 an hour and $70 an hour. We are approving parental transportation agreement with, I believe, 1 student not to exceed $17,280. And then we are also approving our contracts with Hunterdon County Polytech and Hunterdon County Vocational. And finally, and most important, is as a stipulation every year, we need to approve the student parking fees set at $75, which to my best recollection has been about this parking fee since the mid-90s when I had to pay. Moving H1 through H19.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes.
Just one comment on the parking fee. I've heard several criticisms that you can only pay the parking fee through the online system, which requires you to pay a service fee on top of the parking fee. So there's been a request to have other options for paying that.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely, I hadn't heard that specific concern, but we'll definitely take a look at that. I know we've been looking over the years at a couple of different options for online payment and other things, but we'll take a look into that. Thank you.
I just have a question about the, for the academy programs. Can you just give a little more information about that? That's for the Hunterdon County Vocational School for our academy programs, and it has the pricing. Are there specific courses that within those programs that we don't offer and they do, or how does that work?
Which number are you on?
Yeah,
Mrs.
which,
Butterfield? Which number on the agenda?
number 18 on the, yeah, so way to touch a nerve there, Mrs. Butterfield. So our county vocational programs offer, under number 18, those are the full-time programs that they offer in other high schools. So that's the animal science program that they offer as a jointure between sort of Voorhees High School and then their campus in Califon where they have the animals. The biomedical program is in North Hunterdon, Voorhees. The computer science program has moved from Del Valle, I believe it's in Voorhees now, and the environmental science program also, I believe, at Voorhees. So these are their 4-year programs that students apply to out of 8th grade. For every one of those students, and it fluctuates each year, sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, the number of kids, but the cost per student coming up is $93.05 per student. Now, I can't tell you, and in fact, I wouldn't tell you that we don't offer these programs. We have a biomedical sciences program. We have a computer science program. I have often said, and I don't mind saying this as forcefully as I'm about to, whenever we put our minds to it here at Central to do a program like this, I think we do it in such a stellar and top-notch way that I can't imagine what could be a draw away, except that, this is a big school, there are a lot of things that people look at here. I've struggled with this my entire career in multiple counties, that our county vocational district offers these programs, I have to think, at the expense of more deliberate and comprehensive work on the kinds of programs that vocational districts were founded to offer. The technical trades programs. These are programs that are designed specifically to compete with the comprehensive high schools. And what they do is they take the top students from each sending district and give them seats in this program, which takes them out of our student pool as well. So not only is it money out the door, it's some of the top performing students coming out of every one of our middle schools moving into these programs. Now, I don't mind some of that. When we come up with a program, and this is a marching order that I've given to my staff here, when we come up with a biomedical sciences program or a computer science program or this or that, we are committed to equity of access in that program to ensure that the students who are really passionate about that program, who really want to study that, who are ready to study it, have access to that program. So I feel like we're offering even more access through our own programs than what we see with the top students across the county being moved to this program. Central, for some reason that I don't know the full history behind, has never been given the opportunity to house one of these programs. Or if it was given the opportunity at one point, it didn't choose to take advantage of it. But I have to be honest, I don't know. I would much rather bring to bear our talent on developing our own programs than necessarily subscribe to these. But you can see an awful lot of money goes out the door. We have education to do to make sure that parents understand that we offer compelling programs as well. We have education to do to understand that the outcomes for our students in these programs are just as compelling as for the students who go to biomedical or any of those academies. And we also just see benefits in students being educated here in their own community instead of being shipped off to another school. Sorry, you touched a nerve. But in that, did that give you some more information about, is there any more specific question?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the description and I realized that we offer most of those classes, so that's why I didn't quite understand that, but yeah.
So the fact that we offer those programs does not insulate us from still having to give students up to their programs. That's been decided by courts in multiple counties throughout the past few years, that we can't take the fact that we have our own biomedical program that we're very proud of and say then that we offer that program, so therefore we don't have to give students up to another school. So that's just a fact of where we are on that. Every student ought to have access to the right program, and these are the right programs for some students. I wouldn't deny it. It worries me a bit that amount of money goes out the door when we offer just as compelling opportunities here. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share all this.
Any other questions or comments on the O&T portion of the agenda? Hearing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Bletfield?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. Hughes?
Yes. Personnel Committee, Ms. Bletfield?
Yeah, we have a lot on the agenda that we are approving, so did you want to do it, or?
Was,
I think since Mrs. Bletfield was at the committee meeting, we just talked about her presenting.
go ahead.
Is that okay?
Okay, I'll try and get through this quickly if I can. We have 2 retirements, Mary Brownstein and Fiona DeScala, so we wish them well in their retirement. The one position, Fiona DeScala, the secretary in the print office, we will not be replacing that position because there's just not as much activity anymore in that office. We have 5 resignations, including a family consumer science teacher and a Spanish teacher. We have 13 appointments. One is a Spanish teacher to replace that position. We have a replacement English teacher, a couple of paraprofessionals, school counselor, a family consumer science teacher who will be doing the child development courses. We have a business teacher, which is great because that will pick up some of the classes that were being taught by Scott Cohen last year, because we are also approving Mr. Cohen as our new Dean of Students. And we are looking forward to having him start in that position. He comes here with a wealth of experience and knowledge, so we think he will be a great asset to the district. And for those of you who've been around for a while, you may also notice a very well-known name here, Eric Wasserman, who was a longtime beloved math teacher here at Central. He retired it was just last year, right? He retired last year, and now with a change in the law, he's actually able to come and be a replacement math teacher. So he'll be here for a few months this year, and we're looking forward to having him back. He's a bit of an icon here. And actually his son, Alex, we are also approving as a paraprofessional. When I make the motion, there's actually 2 typos here. So for Ashley Peterson and Eric Wasserman, the end dates for them need to say 2023 instead of 2022. The dates, though, are the same, just the year changes? Okay. So we'll just make those changes. That's in under the appointments and for numbers 9 and 12. Okay, we have also a leave of absence, 2 per diems for long-term subs. We have some hourly appointments, including the HCTV student workers and mentor buddy training and training instructors. And all the rates that you see are the new rates based on our new contract. We have curriculum writing for the counseling department, IMC and special services summer work, summer Aspire credit completion instructors. We are appointing athletic event workers, approving a 6-block stipend for 2 math teachers. We have 4 conferences we are approving. There's 2 that are a bit more expensive than they've been because we're now going back to doing conferences in person, which we hadn't done for a while. We have a head mechanic certification stipend, which is a new amount, again, based on the new contract. Rescinding 2 appointments. We are approving 4 policies for first reading. There's both the teaching and support staff dress and grooming policies, professional responsibility for teaching staff members, and the care of school property policies. We are abolishing the policy on highly qualified teachers on first reading. approving substitute bus drivers, custodians, secretaries, and teachers. We're approving curriculum and instruction, professional development, instructors, and attendees, again, based on the new contract rates from the new, from our new contract. We are appointing proctors, monitors, and test coordinators for the school year, approving teachers for the new student orientation. We have special services and general AM, PM supervision, 3 Schedule D fall coaches, and 4 Schedule C advisors, all unpaid. We have 2 student teachers, 1 for physics and 1 actually with our SAC. We have a sidebar with the HCAA that is just a cleanup of language for carryover of personal days and vacation days. And then we just have a couple of revisions. So with that, I will move personnel items 1 through 32. And Bruce, I'm happy to have you do it in the future
Second.
again.
Thank you so much.
Teamwork, thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'd just like to make a comment, although I'm excited about all of our contractual appointments tonight. Mr. Cohen in particular as our new Dean of Students being approved tonight once we take our vote, if it's improved. Very, very excited for that appointment.
Yeah, I'll echo that as well. Scott, you've been a contributor since I first met you as a parent in the district, right? And well before my time here as well. I know folks know you well throughout the community and here, and we're just really pleased about the prospect of you doing this work for our kids in our school. Looking forward to it.
Any other comments on the personnel agenda?
The couple of things in the summer I do want to share, just it's wonderful today as the sports and the bands and everybody's sort of back on campus this week, and you know, you hear that metronome going again and all of that. It's wonderful, but there was a lot of good activity across the summer, and counselors have been particularly busy and will continue to be continually busy this week in their work, not only helping students get credit recovery, but also doing those last-minute schedule changes that we find ourselves. So there is a motion on here for additional hours for counselors to continue to work through the summer, and we're just, you know, it's been a lively place of a lot of good work this summer. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Blackfield,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Fowler,
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hughes.
Yes. Mrs. O'Donnell's not here tonight, but I don't believe we don't have any updates on racism, equity, diversity.
Yeah, the committee didn't have a chance to meet, but I did want to share that as part of our efforts to adopt, the board's efforts to adopt the care policy, the new care policy 8100, over the course of the year, we had some staff looking at some of our other policies to see how they lined up with the draft of that policy. So we may have some other policy changes coming down the road as we look at the results of those reviews by staff, and certainly as we head into this school year, and it'll be one of Mr. Cohen's chief duties is to continue to shepherd and help all of that work move forward.
Thank you. Any additional board business? Just two brief things. I just want to remind the board about our retreat next Monday and Tuesday. I'm going to keep saying it until everybody shows up on Monday night. Also want to give a brief update on the board statement, which was made on June 13th. I read it at the board meeting and we put it out there in writing. We had promised after the May 16th incident to follow up and to work over the summer on 3 major areas. So I just wanted to give a brief update on what's been done and where some of that work is headed. One of the things we talked about was creating a regulation to follow our policy 5520, which is about student demonstrations. It's been tough being able to do that work without folks here on campus. So that work is geared up to start once people are coming back in the next few weeks with school starting again. We do have an existing committee. It's a district safety team, which is made up of staff, parents, and students. So that team will be charged with working on the regulation. The board will be able to take part in that as well. So we're hoping to be ready to go when school starts again and everybody's back on campus to work on that regulation. Second, we talked about working more collaboratively with law enforcement, outside security and safety consultants. Dr. Moore spoke about the training we had here on Friday. We also have talked about the new Class 3 officer who will be starting in a few weeks. We also have some other security measures that Dr. Moore talked about, so there are some concrete plans in place there for security and safety measures that will be starting in September. Also, the new doorways that Dr. Moore mentioned as well, that you have to swipe through twice to get through. The last thing was professional development for administration and staff. One of our VPs, Jessica Long, completed school safety training. We also plan on working with local law enforcement and DOE to see what types of coursework they have or seminars that we can engage our administration and staff in. So that's also something that's up on the agenda for once school starts up again in September. So just wanted to give an update to the board and to the public about the direction we're heading on some of those promises we made after the May 16th demonstration. And so those things will all be up and running in the next few weeks, if they aren't already. If nobody has any additional board business, we'll move on to the second residence forum for general comments. As always, it will be a total of 30 minutes, 5 minutes per speaker. Please come to the mic. State your name and municipality, and hopefully there's a piece of paper on the dais that you could write your name and town.
So the alarm will go off at 4 minutes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So the alarm will go off at 4 minutes, and then you'll have 1 minute remaining.
I'd like to comment tonight on Dr. Moore's letter received August 19th.
I'm sorry, could you just state your name and
Sarah
municipality?
Stangata, Raritan Township.
Thank you.
Dr. Moore's letter received August 19th with regard to the climate survey. Thank you for bringing to our attention what many of us already know, that many kids are not thriving at Hunterdon Central due to varying factors. As some of you may remember, my daughter spoke at the May board meeting with regard to a bullying incident she experienced from another student, which involved us needing to call in Raritan Township Police to file a report, a now documented report of cyber harassment. We opted to not press charges at that time, hoping that things would be dealt with on the school level appropriately. Following 2 more incidences involving verbal harassment at the school, we finally filed a HIB, including all incidences beginning from the original cyber harassment. However, the Board of Ed in front of us denied our HIB report. It's interesting to me that the local law enforcement documented it as cyber harassment, but our school does not. I failed my daughter by not being more aggressive from the initial cyber harassment incident, but I wanted to have faith in the school. I think it is great we are teaching our next generation to be more accepting, but we need to get back to the basics of appropriate behavior and kids learning accountability for their actions, regardless of gender, race, etc. I recall my daughter showing me a video that circulated on social media of an individual dressed in a wig, high heels, and a miniskirt, known by Central students to be a biological male individual, who was army crawling down our school hallway while a hall monitor is seen right there as it is happening. Since when did this become acceptable school behavior? Where is all the security you mentioned around the school? How come when my daughter was verbally accosted in the hallway by a student coming out of a bathroom, no one was around to see it except for the friend who was with my daughter at the time and accompanied her to the school office to report the incident? The students are running the show and they are getting away with it, and teachers are fleeing because they can't teach because of it. I support the limit of phone usage during school. However, this will not change the behavior of students. Bullying, fighting, etc. has been going on long before social media existed. Yes, it's gotten worse, but it's been around for a long time. I remember my own high school experience of watching a kid get thrown through a glass trophy case. However, what has changed is that the accountability that kids don't have and the ability for students to get away with completely unacceptable behavior on a daily basis. Why? What are we really focusing on at Central? Are we really focused on graduating as many passing students as we can? Because remember, kids can do zero work and still get 60% grade. Or are we focusing on graduating students who can thrive in life after school?
Most of all, we need change, starting with this Board of Ed. Remember, come November and vote Reimer, Duggan, Peterson. It starts at the top. We need better leadership. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Shaban. I live in Raritan. This is actually about an agenda item, but I just didn't come up earlier for some reason.
That's okay. You can bring up anything now.
So it's about the high school student representative for the board. I noticed in the report, I guess, written about it, that the report written by the high school representative of the board would be presented to student council. And I'm actually the co-editor-in-chief of the school's newspaper, The Lamp. And I was wondering if a note could be made to also send that report to the school newspaper in order for it to be published and more widely distributed among students, since there have been issues with people not showing up to student council meetings. So I thought that would be a good way for more students to have access to board news and that report that's being published. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brand, you're writing that down, right? Yes, that's a good idea. Can I speak a little bit? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you.
I want to speak on the student representative
Sure,
a little bit.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Scott Cohen, Raritan Township. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the board and Dr. Moore for the appointment as Dean of Students. I appreciate all the administrative support, and I look forward to the work ahead to capitalize on all the excellence that's delivered at Hunterdon Central, and to partner with our entire staff and administration, Mr. Brandt and his terrific leadership team. So I look forward to working with the community, the students, and everybody so we can continue to make progress in some of the areas that we are continually talking about. So thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you guys again at future meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you.
Good evening, folks. Kevin Ostrander, East Amwell Township. I have 3 areas to talk about tonight, and I apologize that I wasn't able to speak at the last 2 board meetings because I was away on work business. The first basket is basically June 13th. Mr. Moore, when we went through Policy 8100, several of us had questions from the audience. You specifically addressed the board and the audience that you were going to follow up with those people. I never got a call. I never got an email. I wasn't surprised. I imagine you have other duties going on, but you specifically mentioned, and I thought, geez, this would be a good chance to talk. Furthermore, I told you during that meeting my daughter was in school, and I removed her for a different educational opportunity. And again, I would have thought that would have sparked your curiosity. Maybe you would have said, hey, maybe I should call this guy. I wonder what's going on with that. So 2 things, never followed up on. But anyway, 8100 went forward, okay? And that's fine. I told you I didn't have an issue with it at the highest level, but I did have an issue with it as far as how it's going to be implemented and maintained. The real irony to me is there's a section and it talks about working with the community. You can't even pick up the phone or send an email to 2 or 3 people that come here and speak out having questions that you should be able to address or answer. But again, it went silent. It's very much like what happened on May 16th. That's your leadership style. It's very disappointing to me as a taxpayer and a parent of a student who used to attend here. So that's one thing. The other thing that's troubling in that is there's also a financial component to it. I know you're going ahead and there's a hire, I guess, of at least 1 full-time head count. There may be more. We don't know. In your own words, you said this is going to go on forever. Your work will never be done. That may be true, but taxpayers would certainly like to understand a little bit more about what's involved there. Is there going to be additional headcount? And maybe that's going to evolve over time, but taxpayers don't like to hear that without having a little bit more information behind it. Again, as I say, the policy is fine. It's admirable at the highest level, but at the same time, it leaves a lot of details still unanswered. I realize, again, it's something that's going to happen over time, and we'll be watching it. I hope it works out well, but I am concerned that you can't follow up on some simple questions from the get-go. You didn't delay the vote. The vote went forward. It was unanimous. A little surprising to me that the board didn't even question, hey, how did those conversations go with the people of the public who had questions? Anyway, nothing happened there. So two issues that were concerning. The second point is, Ms. Hughes, you mentioned it actually. I think it might have been on, it wasn't on the 13th, it might have been the 27th. I don't recall now. But the statement that was read about the May 16th riot that occurred here on campus, just 2 points I would like to mention on that. Firstly, you're right, the communication could have been better, and I appreciate you folks mentioning that. And it is an area that could be improved, be a bit more accurate, more timely. That's important. Again, I'm thankful for that. That was recognized. What I'm unclear on is how anybody in their right mind could claim that the administration acted reasonably. Now, I can only surmise one thing, that the board attorney actually crafted that statement, which is what I would expect from a liability standpoint of potential litigation. I mean, you watched a student get verbally and physically assaulted, and nothing was done. So I don't see how that's possibly a reason. I'd hate to see unreasonable here. I mean, I can only imagine what that would look like. So again, I think, if that's the case, it was probably the board attorney suggesting that statement. I'm familiar with the reasonable man scenario with a lot of legal proceedings and how we use that. But again, I'd say very unreasonable response. Again, I know there's a lot to be learned from that. We'll be watching, as you say tonight, there's some additional policies that'll be coming effective moving forward. I think that'll help. And again, we'll keep a close eye on it. I hope that to be the case. We certainly don't want to repeat on that. But the same thing happened tonight. It's interesting, Mr. Moore, you said something earlier when you were talking about social media. There were two comments. One was Uvalde, and the other one was specifically, what was the one, Uvalde? And then you talked a little bit about the Marxist comment. Are you against free speech? It's funny, you rolled that out like it's outrageous. I'm not part of it either, but at the same time, that is free speech. So I don't really know what the point of that comment was tonight, but it does make me wonder, because you also had the same comment on May 16th, where you said you couldn't believe that there would be a counter-protest to the protest. I think you only like free speech when it aligns with your free speech. And I see that with a lot of people, and that's just not the way it works. Fortunately, the Constitution protects that. Lastly, Ms. O'Donnell is not here, but I have a few comments for her, and I will say this regarding the Matthew Shepard situation with my daughter in advanced English. She doesn't know the whole story about that curriculum, the anti-God, anti-religious component of it, which was pushed onto these kids that are strong in faith. Doesn't matter if they're Jewish, Christian, Muslim. It was ridiculous what they had to endure. And my daughter is strong in her faith, and she was shaken by that. Even the teacher felt very badly for her. She's not the only kid that felt that. There were other kids that felt that way. If you want to have an honest conversation about Matthew Shepard, then let's get it all out on the table. It's very interesting to me. The school is fine bringing religion in as long as it's cast in a negative light. Very disappointed. And again, I'd love to have a lot more time to talk to you about it, Mr. Moore. But the bottom line is it's an issue. You want to have a conversation, we can talk about how he was a drug user, a drug dealer, he was a prostitute, he had sexual relations with his one killer.
Thank you, Mr. Ostrander. Your time is up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Alexis Stangard of Raritan Township. I have a couple questions about the points that were made tonight. I understand that you can't answer the questions right now, but I am looking forward for a follow-up. My first question is the type of surveillance that's being talked about for the bathrooms to detect vandalism that isn't a video camera. I'm not sure how someone drawing graffiti is going to be detected by anything other than a surveillance camera.
I'm sorry, Alexa. Can you repeat what you said?
You talked about today how there are going to be detectors for vandalism and graffiti in the bathroom, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to be detected with anything other than a video camera.
Thank you.
And to my knowledge, that's illegal, and I'm not sure how I feel about a video camera being in the bathroom. Next is the board spoke about how many HIB cases have evolved through social media, and I wanted to ask how many of those HIBs that evolved from social media have actually gone through. From my experience, it seems as the board picks which HIBs go through by what they want and think, and not by the actual Hunterdon Central policy, which is a no-tolerance policy to all harassment and bullying, not just some of it. I'm going to be a sophomore this year, and after my absolutely traumatizing freshman year, with the amounts of bullying and harassment that occurred, I would hope Central starts to take every single student's mental health seriously and safety seriously, not just some of the students that they decide to choose. And I hope that no student has to be turned away from the board, like I was, and left to go and fight the harassment by myself with the police department. And Mr. Brandt, that does not go for you, because you have been great. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, so at 8:29, we will close public comment. Do we have any board comments?
I'll share a couple of things really quickly. One of the things that came up was about student representation on the boards. That's a newer law that we have to implement this coming school year. We meet those requirements simply by taking the students who have been delivering those monthly reports and putting them at the table. And of course, we want to do more than just meet the requirement. We want to make that a much more robust program of students' connection to the board through committees, through everything else. And that's some retreat conversation for us next week. But I think it's a wonderful idea to, whatever comes of that, to make sure that not only that our student press is able to receive all the information that comes out of it, but also that they can be an eye in all of that too. So there's an excellent suggestion there and additional places to focus. I'll also share at this point the vape detectors that are going into the bathrooms. Think of a smoke detector. You know, smoke detector is able to detect specific chemicals in the air. That's how a vape detector works. These detectors also can detect when sound goes beyond a certain level. That would be indicative of certain kinds of vandalism, like we've seen in schools over the years, rough vandalism. I didn't mention the graffiti at all. There's nothing that would necessarily identify graffiti in the bathroom. But the vape detectors are there to root out specific chemicals that might be in the air as a result of student behavior in the restrooms, and also noises that rise to the level of being indicative of violence or other kinds of really disruptive behavior there in the bathroom. They're used in schools throughout the state and country, and we're looking forward to bring those on board to help address the concerns that students and staff and parents have levied about, the bathrooms and comfort in those facilities.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Anybody else have board comments? Yeah, please.
So I did hear at least 2 public comments tonight of people that were students, I'll say, that were uncomfortable at our school. And I want to acknowledge that, I want to recognize it, and I want to say, at least from my position on the board, the expectation from my perspective is that the staff and administration of the school is doing its best to keep that from happening. From what I see so far, I'm in the line with that expectation that they're fully carrying that out to the best of their ability. Obviously, some things fall through the cracks sometimes, and we try to address them whenever we can. Nobody's perfect. But want to apologize again for any student that comes to this institution and is not comfortable, because that does not allow us to learn, and that's not at least what I'm here to drive as a part of this institution.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler. And just getting back a little bit to the culture survey data, I guess that was our direction all along, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it was 38% or 58%, or whether somebody agreed or disagreed with where a middle ground answer fell, we were all concerned with the disturbing trends in certain areas. And so our focus from the get-go has been addressing and action on those downward trends. So thank you, Mr. Fowler, for recognizing that, because that is our goal, as always, and certainly going into the next school year, is safety, security, emotional, and physical of all of our students.
Yeah, I'd also like to echo Mr. Fowler's comments. You know, we never want any student to feel uncomfortable. I'm not an attorney, so I'm not the best person to speak to this, but I can just tell you whether or not something meets a HIB standard is different than whether or not something meets a discipline standard in the school. So there are certain legal requirements to meet a HIB standard. You know, I'm just talking in general terms here. But just because if something doesn't meet a HIB standard, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's no disciplinary actions being taken. I'll just leave it at that because again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to speak to specifics, but just know that things are taken very seriously.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, to Mr. Ostrander's comment about the statement that I put out on behalf of the board with regard to the May 16th incident, we've repeated time and time again, and I'll say it again, the board has been privy to a lot more information than the public has. Security information, safety information that cannot be made public, and so we stand behind that statement based upon the information we have. Any other board comments? Okay, we actually have no items for executive session tonight.
Yeah, the agenda actually lists 2 items, but we have no need to go into closed session. So.
I didn't even see that. Okay. So we will not have an executive session, so can I just have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
So move.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.